Sometimes I hate being right, but there's a quid pro quo in play right before our very eyes, connecting Jeff Bezos, Amazon, by extension, the Washington Post, and Melania Trump, and a $1 million, well, what else can we call it, payoff. I'm Michael Popak. You're on Legal AF, the YouTube channel. You know what to do. If you want to help, hit the subscribe button. Let's return to what is now obvious. Jeff Bezos, a close friend and neighbor of Jared Kushner and Ivanka Kushner down in Florida. They live literally next door to each other in Indian Creek in the billionaire bunker there. He's the one that owns the Washington Post besides Amazon, the one that refused to endorse Kamala Harris at a moment when she needed it. Instead, he donated $1 million to the inauguration for Donald Trump, along with Facebook, along with Apple. That seems to be the going rate to buy influence with Donald Trump and to kiss his backside, $1 million. And now, right on cue, even before the inauguration, even before the $1 million, where he's already, Jeff Bezos, getting his ROI, his return on investment, because guess who's going to be carrying and producing the Melania documentary on Amazon Prime streaming? Jeff Bezos. So that's all you got to do. You pay $1 million, you get to carry and produce Melania's documentary, being directed by all things. I don't know if direction is even the right word, by Brett Ratner. That's a guy who used, he did the Rush Hour series and some other shows, got into trouble when he produced the Oscars a number of years ago, made a homophobic comment. But Brett Ratner's back, apparently, looking for a job. And so he's now been hired by Jeff Bezos. Melania Trump's going to be getting an executive producer credit, meaning she's going to get a share of the proceeds from this. So every time, if you have the misfortune of having Amazon Prime and streaming and you decide, click, you want to watch the Melania show, just know you're putting money ultimately in the pocket through a waterfall into Melania Trump and Donald Trump's pocketbook. You will see in a year when she has to actually disclose her taxes and tax returns, if she ever gets around to doing that she got millions and millions of dollars from this documentary. And now we know, as I've said before, Jeff Bezos was never going to allow the Washington Post to do its job as the member of the Fourth Estate. This freedom of the press was never going to happen under Jeff Bezos because he's so tied up in knots with ethical conflicts. He's a defense contractor. Let's just call him out for what he is. I know people like to say, oh, he owns Amazon, Blue Origin. He can go up in the sky with one of his rockets. Oh, he's so fun and cuddly. And look at his trophy girlfriend. Yeah, no. Let's talk about him he's a military contractor who has billions of dollars of contracts with the federal government to provide cloud computing and other computing services to the military and to other agencies of the federal government. It totals billions of dollars. I think it's a couple of $1 billion. And so he wasn't going to risk that for his little side gig or hobby of owning the Washington Post, where democracy dies in the darkness. We fired the Washington Post, by the way. I used to do ads for the Washington Post back in the day for the Midas Touch Network. We don't any longer because we just couldn't take it any longer. And the stench of hypocrisy was so great that the odor of hypocrisy, it was overwhelming, and we got rid of them. And so now you see it. Bezos has been worming his way up the backside, I almost use another phrase, of Ivanka and Jared and Donald Trump for a long time. He parties with the Kushners in Aspen and in Miami. Their kids go to school together, know each other, whatever it's supposed to be. So I knew he was never going to be hands off the editorial room, editorial decision-making at the Washington Post as the publisher. He was always going to interfere and tell them what they can and can't say against his business interests. And he wasn't, I'm sure in his mind, he's like, well, I'm a fiduciary to the shareholders of Amazon and the stock, and we can't jeopardize our billions of dollars for my side hobby of owning a newspaper. Well, then don't own a newspaper. Get out of the media business. If you can't do it wholeheartedly without any independence, if you can't do it with independence, if you can't do it freely, if you can't do it without worrying about your checkbook and your pocketbook and your corporate goals and your relationship with the Kushners and Donald Trump, and you got to go visit Mar-a-Lago before the inauguration and all that, then get out of the newspaper business. Turn it over to free media, free journalism, independent entities like Legal AF and the Midas Touch Network do that. But don't put $1 million in Donald Trump's inauguration fund and then, look what happened. I just got the Melania contract to do her documentary and put it on Amazon streaming. Oh, Prime streaming. Oh, how could that? That's such a coincidence. Bullshit. And enough is enough. I get it. All the tech bros and tech companies want to curry favor with Donald Trump because they think he's one of theirs. There is a small tech group. It's basically the PayPal mafia. It's all the people that were involved with PayPal. The Thiels of the world, the Musks of the world, by extension, J.D. Vance. It's the PayPal mafia and their family tree that's controlling Donald Trump's tech and tech decision-making and AI. It's all investment bankers and private equity guys you never heard of that are running your public policy for you. And the ones that were kind of the old school tech companies like Amazon, Facebook, and Apple, they're a little bit with their nose pressed against the glass. And that's why they got to stroke these $1 million checks in order to try to curry favor with Donald Trump and be first in line to produce the Melania documentary. Is he going to do what I almost said the Soviets, what the Russians did a couple of months ago when they were running an article about Donald Trump's big win in the background during the 60 Minutes of Russia, which is all controlled by Putin? They had pictures of Melania Trump in her soft porn photos where she's semi-nude in the pictures as they were talking about congratulating Donald Trump as a way to troll him. Or is that what Ratner's going to do? Why don't you show that chapter? I bet you the chapter where she comes from Slovenia, probably works illegally on an immigration status that wasn't appropriate to work, got her parents somehow green cards, who knows how, and all of that. I bet you that chapter gets left out. I bet you the chapter where she's posing naked in photo shoots as a middling fashion model or whatever she was supposed to be. I bet you that gets left out. I bet you all the terrible things she did as a non-existent first lady the first time around, I bet you that gets left out. What about chopping down the rose garden? What about chopping down all the Christmas trees and putting up blood red Christmas trees? What about that? A bunch of that's kids. They're gonna be left out. How about when she told her closest friends at the time that she hated the public, didn't want to do any of the first lady duties like hosting holiday parties or egg rolls, Easter egg hunts. She hated that part. In the middle of a major crisis in the first administration, when her husband, the president at the time, was separating families at the border and putting children in cages, imprisoning them. She infamously went up the Air Force One steps with a fatigue jacket with the words on the back, "I don't care, do you?" Like I could care less, right? Signaling a message. So what is her great accomplishment? Is there going to be a chapter in the documentary about her holding and extorting her husband to improve their prenuptial by millions and millions of dollars to make sure Barron Trump, her only child with Donald, was properly taken care of versus the other children that he had, or she wouldn't report for duty as the first lady? Is that chapter going to be in there? Tell me, Brett. Tell me now what's going to be in there. Or is it going to be like a visual version of Melania, the book, like that 100-page coffee table book that came out recently that was written by some combination of AI and some ghostwriter? Anybody ever hear Melania put a sentence together? Well, I defy you. I've seen her writing on Twitter, on social media posts. She says the wrong thing at the exact wrong moment. To continue to fuel the flames and pour gasoline on a major crisis in America like no other person I've ever seen. First ladies are usually consolers in chief, right? They bring America to their bosom, right, and make them feel comforted, right? I may not have agreed with George W. Bush's policies, but Laura Bush, right, Barbara Bush, Rosalind Carter, Jackie Kennedy, Hillary Clinton at the time, even she was comforting at the moment when we needed it. Jill Biden, Dr. Jill. I defy you to tell me one, and of course Michelle Obama. But I didn't mean to leave her out and put her last. She should have been first. But I defy anybody in the chat here. to list for me the accomplishments, and I mean this in a positive way, of Melania Trump in her first term as First Lady, or what you think she's going to do in the second term, right? But if you're Jeff Bezos and Laura Sanchez, his girlfriend, and their buddies, the Kushners, Prime streaming is where you're going to see the documentary after $1 million payment was made. That's a quid pro quo that I got to call out. Speaking of calling out, did I remind you that I'm on Legal AF, the YouTube channel right now, and so are you? Take a minute, hit the free subscribe button, and help us grow to 500,000. I'll take 500,000 before the end of the first quarter of 2025. So hopefully by March, February or March, we should be there. We're at over, we're going to hit 400,000 in the next week or so. And then from there, it's sky's the limit. And it's all because of the audience here. Yeah, I'm doing my part to curate the content and produce the content and sometimes do the content. But you're doing your part because you're finding this information interesting, exciting, informative, entertaining on occasion. And I appreciate you being here. Legal AF, the YouTube channel, Legal AF, the podcast, the OG, 5 years and running, Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Midas Touch Network. Top 8 now in the world. I can't even believe it. It's like a garage band that went, is now playing, 100,000 person arenas. That's what Legal AF is all about. Wednesdays with Karen Friedman Igdifilo. She's now more famous than ever. And then Saturdays with Ben Meiselas, my co-founder on Legal AF. I do a show called Popak Live on Tuesdays. Popak Live. It's sort of like this, but longer. 45 minutes. I take questions. I give answers. I don't take any prisoners. Sometimes I'm unhinged. I'm certainly unfiltered. And that's Tuesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Midas Touch Network. So until my next contribution to all things Legal AF, this is Michael Popak, and I'm reporting. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.